Hello everyone, I hope you're going well. Today I'm going to show you how to play chess. This is a complete guide for beginners, so if you're looking for a good chess coach, if you're a beginner or even an intermediate player, just go in the comment section, I'll be there in order to answer you. So now, how to play chess. This is a rook, and the rook goes that way and that way. For example, let's say I will create a new position. Let's say that you put a rook like this. The rook can go only in a straight line on the rest or on the left side, the right side, in front and behind. And the chessboard is very big, so if you're looking for a rook on the chessboard, let's say the rook is over there, you should look at the rook. You should look at all the squares that your rook does control. The next piece is now the queen. The queen is very strong. Why? Because the queen can go on straight lines, like the rook, but also diagonally. So it means that if you put a queen in the center of the board, it can do a lot of things. So it's very difficult for the opponent to spot what the queen can actually do. The next piece right now is the knight. And the knight is also a very interesting piece. Why? Because the knight does jump in an L sign. You see what I mean? You see, this is all the possible moves that the knight can do. And for example, it jumps like this and like that, and it continues that way. So once you know this, we can finally look at the bishop, and during the game you will have two bishops, one on the light squares and one of the black squares. And when the bishop is on the light squares, it only goes diagonally on light squares. And this is the same with the black square bishop, only on the black squares all over the chessboard, which is very good. So that's why having two bishops in the center is very strong. Now we will look at the standard position, and there is a very important rules because we will now talk about the pawns, and this is not so easy to understand what a pawn can do. So when it's the first pawn move, the pawn can go two squares and not only one. If you want, you can put the pawn on the first square, but if you want, the first pawn move can actually go from two squares. Now let's say the game continue, I just put some random moves and so on and so on. Now let's say the black plays this move. If you want, because it is still the first move on the A, B, F, G and H pawn, they can still move from two pawns ahead. So this is still possible. But once you move this, you cannot move two times. I mean, you will have to go only one square ahead and so on. Now, very important rule with the pawns. I will put a pawn over there. Now, let's say black manages to put a pawn like that. If, with the white pieces, you decide to move your pawn from two squares and the pawn are looking at each other, then you can take en passant, which means that you have to. It means that you can just take your opponent with the movement. For example, let's say you are fighting with someone probably 600 years ago, medieval times, and you are on the knight, and your opponent, the guy who wants to kill you, is also on the knight. You will both attack yourself like that, and because you have some swords, you can actually touch your opponent before he touches you, and this is so-called an en passant. Like this, you bam, and now you manages to win because you're taking him with you during the movement. This is a French word, by the way. So this is very important. And now let's say that the pawn has already moved. Let's say the pawn has already moved, and you manages to go here. Now it's not en passant anymore. It's very important to notice that. Now another rule with the pawn, because this is very difficult, but when the pawn reaches the 7th rank, it's very strong. Why? Because if the pawn manages to go on that square, it can actually promote to whatever piece it wants, except the king, of course, to a queen, or a rook, or a knight, or a bishop, depending on what you want. Now that we have spoken about all the pieces, we will now talk about the king. The king can actually move one square every time, so it's not so strong. But the king is still the most important piece, because if you get checkmated, you will actually lose the game. When there is no more pieces on the board but there are only pawns, something like that, and there is no pieces, the king is the strongest piece, because... Wait a second, because somehow chess.com is broken. When there is no more pieces, the king is the only piece which can play. So now the king is very strong, because he can go very fast toward the center. And now this is what we call an opposition. The king is next to the other king, and this king cannot enter these squares like that, because there is a natural barrier between the two kings. There must be one square from escaping square, you know what I mean? Which means that, let's say a queen jumps on the board like that. Okay, now the other queen will be put in there. Now this is winning for white, because check, the king cannot take, because this king, oopsie, because this king is actually protecting the queen. So that's why the king will have to move, and it can stay on this diagonal because this is a check. And now we can just grab the queen. So yeah, this was a complete beginner guide in order to play chess. In the next video, I'm going to talk about the openings. Then in the next episode of this small series, I will talk about the middle games and of course the end games. If you have some more questions, just go in the comment section. I'll be there in order to answer you. See you in the future upload. Take care.